For Scott was a surfing song. He and I talked about surfing. He did a lot of surfing, I think in California as well as Florida. So this was a song, a surfing song with lyrics. Most of them don't have lyrics. You all know this one. Yeah.
I didn't surf, but I grew up in the same area.
Yeah.
I was raised at the beach, and Scott was too. And I hung with the fishermen, and Scott was the surfer.
Okay.
But we crossed paths often.
Yeah.
And Scott was instrumental on Kay and I moving up here
Yeah.
when it was time. So, a giving guy.
Thank you all for coming out. This is a difficult time. Marie, Kramer, thank you for being here. We're sorry that you are having to deal with this. It is my hope that this time together will be helpful in finding the light in the darkness. Let me begin by saying, Tuesday night late, I received a message from a neighbor and friend of theirs that said, Scott had passed away. I was overcome. I was shocked. I was stunned, as all of you were. I could not believe it. I looked on Facebook to see if I could find something. I didn't. I sent a text to Scott Johnson. You're always teasing and carrying on with Scott. I said, I've heard this. Have you heard anything? I heard back from him at 4 o'clock in the morning. He said he had found something on Facebook that said, that Scott had passed away. I woke up in the morning realizing that I needed to send something to you all. I typed it out, and I couldn't push post because it made it real. And I didn't want it to be real. I pushed post, and I went to fix coffee. And I looked out the window, and there they were. Daffodils. It was a cold, rainy, miserable morning. But in the cold and the miserable and the dark were the promises. Promises. And they reminded me instantly of Scott. Because that's who he was. He was the light. He was the promise. He was the possibility. Now, I've not intended this to be a religious experience, but we can't gather together like this for this reason without it being a very spiritual experience. So if you will allow me, I want to share 2 brief passages out of the sacred text that all of us are familiar with. One passage, one part of the text says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of great darkness." Here's the promise in that. The word says that I walk through. The valley of the shadow of great darkness is not a stopping place. It is a process of moving through. other part of that sacred text says, surely, surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me. And that's why we're here today. We're bringing the goodness and mercy to the darkness. I always think about this as that guy in Peanuts, the one that runs around with the dust cloud over his head, Pigpen. The dust cloud is always with Pigpen. The promise is that the goodness and mercy is always with us. It's like that cloud. The problem we have is we get caught in the darkness and we miss seeing the sacred moments of goodness and mercy. So we are here today to be a part of the goodness and mercy. And the way we're going to do that, we want to share stories, about Scott. Who wants to be first? Who has a remembrance of thought? All right.
Well, Scott was my partner in the Fall Classic last year in Hiawassee. We got a medal. And I have never seen him so happy. He was so proud of that medal. And we thought we got gold, but because of point scoring,
Yes. Had that experience.
he even went up and asked. Because he knew we had beat everybody. He couldn't understand. That may have been his first tournament, but he was so elated. And another experience, we played pickleball. Peter and Gary and Scott were working. Everybody left. And I came back and Scott and Peter were still here. I said, y'all want me to go get you a beer? And I found out that Scott's favorite drink is my favorite drink, red wine. And one more thing. I've been called a hippie most of my life. And that was something I was very proud to share with Scott. Because most people connect the word hippie with long hair and don't take a bath and live. Being a hippie is being free in your heart, caring for the earth and caring for the others. And that's what Scott was to me. And I will miss him terribly.
I don't like to focus on the whole part that I have multiple sclerosis, and Scott knew that. But Scott would notice if I didn't have a partner, and he'd say, "Come on, Kristen." He didn't care if I played good. He didn't care. He was just like, "Just have fun." Not just anybody will do that. Scott was always do that for me. That means a lot to me. Scott was he meant so much to me, and I'm so thankful that I met him. And I'm gonna miss him.
Yes.
Well, I just got one really good story about Scott, but I'll preface by saying I only knew Scott for about 2 years. So I was really looking forward to getting to know him a lot better. I said, this is a guy, I really love and respect, and I'm looking forward to, just knowing more about him and getting to know him better over the years. And now that's not going to happen. And that's a big loss for me. It's a big loss for all of us. But I'll just tell you one story. It's typical Scott. We were playing out here last summer one time, and I was Scott's partner, and these two other guys we were playing against were visiting. And one of the guys, we were making small talk before the game, was from Jacksonville. And so Scott, started chatting them up. And it turns out they were grew up really close to each other. Were about the same age. Went to rival high schools, and they're chatting up the whole game. And one of them would say, "Well, you know so and so," and the other guy would say, "Yeah, I used to hang out with his brother." And then they name another guy, and the other guy would say, "Yeah, I know him. We used to be on the tennis team together," and so on and so on. Between points every time, and before we got through with the game, they must have mentioned 15 to 20 people, and they all knew each other. They both knew both of them. So after the game, I looked at both of them. I said, "How in the hell do you guys not know each other?" But that was typical Scott. He made somebody feel welcome. And he was just a great guy. One of the best.
All right. Somebody else.
Sitting in his chair.
I called Scott Ponytail Scott. I called Scott Ponytail Scott because of the 3 Scott things, and he truly was a gentleman. Because again, you could be the weakest player, and he would never let you feel like you were detrimental to his game.
That's what I'm talking about.
He was just that special, and that's what we're going to miss about him, his generous spirit.
I just think he was a very nice guy, and he was easy to talk to, and he would sit out here, and I remember a long conversation when I got my dog, and he was, talking about did he keep pets at times?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what he was talking about. And he just talked, and he's very nice. He was very nice, and we're all gonna miss him. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I just moved here a year ago, and the thing I remember about Scott is he was a nice man. I don't have too many stories. I played with him, and he was always very kind, and I picked up this rock a couple of months ago right out here, and I started painting on it, and then I heard about Scott's death. And I lit a candle, and I was painting, and all of a sudden I knew I had to paint this for Scott. And I have in loving memory of Scott Collings, 214.
That's beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so sweet.
We have a good group.
Yes, we loved him very much.
Yeah. Scott loved this group. Somebody else have a story?
I want to say something. Scott used to talk a lot about you. He loved you deeply.
Yeah.
I really love that about him. You don't see men do that very often, and especially in a pickleball court when the wife's not even around. But he cared so much about you. He was kind. He was gentle. He watched my dog, and I think you went to my house with him. I came back, the house was spotless. My yard was cleaned of all the you-know-what, and the house was so clean. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's a man, but he was so good. My dogs loved him. He was so good with animals. And I believe people call him dog whisperer quite a bit. But I really, he was funny. I used to get so mad at him. He would look one way and then he'd take the ball the other way. I'm like, I chased him down many times with a paddle to whack him in the butt. We just loved him. So it is a big loss for us. And our prayers are with you and the family.
Same way with a lot of you people, a lot of y'all, Scott was always an encouragement. It was a joy to play with him, and he was always encouraging and everything. But 4.5 months ago, I fell on that pickleball court right back over there, and all of y'all were just really great. People came to pray with me, and Scott was one of those. He was, talking to me and stuff and encouraging me. I read his posts on Facebook, as I did a lot of y'all. It was real encouraging, but I just miss him very much.
Story? Thoughts? Come on. Scott, we love you first of all. It's a beautiful day for this. I came to Murphy a few years ago, and I heard about this game called pickleball, and I said, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to try it. So I remember it was not even a year ago. I came to these courts, and the first person that I met was Scott. I walked in, there were just a few guys playing when I got here, and Scott came over to me, and he introduced himself to me, and he goes, my name's Scott, and I went, my name's Scott too. I was thinking to myself, oh thank God, at least I got a guy that I'm going to remember here. So, and then he was playing. Where is he? Right There's another. Where's the other Scott?
Right there.
I'm playing. Scott's his teammate. So I asked him, hey, I'm Scott. He goes, I'm Scott too. And I'm looking around like this is a game. They're joking with me.
It's a requirement to be a male pickleball
Hey,
player.
like it's Scott. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow, there's three. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then the other person, I don't remember who. And I'm like, okay, I'm Scott. And the thing about, Scott was, I was new to the game, and I couldn't understand. He was so good. And he was never sweating. I'm playing the game, I'm drenched. And I look at Scott, and it's like, there's not a bead of sweat on it. And he just, boom, boom, and I'm running all over the place. And he goes, Scott, this is a game of thinking. He goes, you gotta learn where, and over the time, I've learned. And it's just, it was remarkable. That the first person that I met here, and a matter of fact, I don't know if it was the last time he was here. We were sitting and we were talking about the pavilion, and he was telling me how he was bringing the wood over in his pickup truck. And he goes, Scott, I don't bring a lot at one time. I don't want it stolen. And I'm like, it was just remarkable that he was there to, everything he was there to help, and dude, I'm gonna miss you.
Amen. Somebody else. Another story. There we go.
Scott was my pickleball partner last year in the seniors games, and we were supposed to play this year. We had already started talking about it, and he was one of the best partners. Sorry, Gary. I have ever had, because he was so kind. He was one of the kindest men I have ever met. He told me a story that he was in California and he was doing some construction work, and it was carpentry work. And he said, I was thinner then than I am now. I think he said he was like 18 or 19. And the house went over a cliff. And he was walking the banister with a piece of plywood on his shoulders. And a big wind came up out of there and lifted him up. And the guy he worked for grabbed his belt and pulled him back down. I was like, who does that? And Scott does. Because Scott was fearless. He really was. And I know everyone here is going to miss him dearly.
So I think my dad grew up as a surfer, and part of being a surfer is just going with the flow. You can't control the waves. All you can do is ride them. I think that he learned early on that you don't need to sweat the little stuff. And I think that's why, he was so easygoing on the court, and that's how he lived his life. Just not worrying about the little things. At the end of the day, it's just a game, Just be nice to everybody, and that's the energy that you'll get back. I know, since he came up here and he had his health issues, to start off last year, and you guys were a family to him. He really considered you guys to be all of his close friends, and he loved this game. He loved coming down here every day, and whenever I would come to visit, he would ask if I wanted to join, and I'd say, hell yeah, Dad, I do. And then he'd say, okay, we'll be there at 9 a.m. You want me to make coffee? He was so excited for this. So I just want you guys all to know that you are all his family too, and that he loved every one of you guys and talked about you guys with such high regard. Thank you all for being here today.
I remember how proud he was to have you here playing with him on the courts.
I'll be here.
If my remembrance is right, he didn't let you play with very many other people. He pretty much wanted to play with you. Yeah.
Well, he did let him play with me.
Okay. All right. Let me have the last story. And then I have a couple of readings and then an announcement to make. Back in the summer, I asked Katrin to help start a group that was first started for people who worked during the day, who wanted to play in the afternoons and evenings after they got off work. So Tuesday, evenings, there started to be a group, and it started off as only people who were working. And in order, they started off with pretty much 4 courts, and then there was some extras as they started adding some folks who didn't work. so that they could have 3 courts with 12 people, and so that's kind of how it has kind of evolved over time, and it's been going really well. I do not believe that Scott played on Tuesday. I think we played on Monday night this week because Tuesday was Valentine's Day, and some of the guys didn't want to be in trouble at home. So we played on Monday night. It's kind of a round robin thing that you are seated in a court based on your wins and losses, and the first game is played to 15, win by 1. Winners stay. Winners move up, losers move down. So it's a pretty competitive kind of experience. So we went through all of that, the rounds, and people were leaving, and there were 4 of us that wanted to play a little bit more. And Scott was one of the 4. Scott and Peter and I and Chris. So we're out there playing. Chris and I win the first match, and they require a rematch. So we swap ends of the court. And if you've played out here at night, you know that one end of the court is pretty dark and hard to see. And so Chris and I ended up with that end of the court. We're behind, but we're gradually kind of coming back a little bit. We get to the place where the score is about 14 to either 12 or 13. Chris and I have lost the serve, so it goes over to Peter and Scott. The score is 14, 13, 12. It is Scott's serve. All right. Y'all know that Scott is left-handed. That's the first problem. Second problem is Scott has never hit a flat, straight ball in his life. Everything is hit with a cut and spin on it. And like someone has already said, he can move this way and hit the ball that way. Right? It is Scott's serve. They need 1 point to win. He steps back there. He is literally serving to me. I'm standing over there waiting on the serve. Y'all have seen this serve, haven't you? It's that little cut that hits the corner and jumps out. I want you to know that the last pickleball Scott Collings hit was an ace serve to win the game.
Yes.
Let me give you one more. I have a reading. Part of the Finding the Light is from Winnie the Pooh today. If ever there is a tomorrow when we are not together, there is something you must always remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think. But the most important thing is, even if we are apart, I'll always be with you. Winnie the Pooh. Sacredness comes in many forms.
Yes.
So, let me conclude by saying that there has been this recommendation that we put together a Scott Memorial Fund, which we're going to do. We'll have a plaque that goes in our pavilion. So all of you who are part of our group understand that we've had some problems financially with expenses on this. So some of the money will go to help us finish that, depending on how much it is. We've got some other things out here. If we get lots of money, we'll put in new lights. Who knows? What the possibilities are. Yeah, that would be fun to have new lights, so we didn't have those dark places. But our
our financial committee, Cobby and Gary and Patty, and Scott Johnson will be, and myself will be people that you can give contributions to. We'll post something on Facebook about mailing in contributions. We'll probably get them mailed to Gary. Gary is our one of our treasurers, and so we will get that going. And you can find ways to remember Scott financially that will be out here, forever. All right. Thank you all for coming. We are all sorry for your loss, and I'm hopeful that this has been a time when you can be encouraged and strengthened by the people that love your husband and your father. And so we thank you for being with us. Thank you all.